Roster Rescue, where we talk football all day, every day. I'm your host, Zack Zander, and I have a friend that's actually a local Cantonite, Canton, Ohio, Hall of Fame city, Bob Lung, the founder and director. He does everything for the Fantasy Football Expo. That is next month, only 3 weeks away. Author of the Fantasy Football Consistency Mag. This guy, he's been playing since 1985. Bob, I was born. I'm not trying to age you, but I was born in 1985. Mr. Lung, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, and I can't tell you how many podcasts I do. And not everybody looks at my bio ahead of time. So that's usually one of their first questions is, hey, when did you start playing fantasy football? And I go, 1985. And you just can see the look on their face like, son of a bitch, I wasn't even born yet. So, yes, I hear that quite a bit. And I get it. That's fine. And we were playing fantasy football before the internet, before it was cool. Never had a clue when we started this that someday that I would be here with this community and this world and bringing everybody to Canton, Ohio. There are dreams and then there's things you can't dream about because you never think you'd get to this point. And here we are today. So, yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, I was at the 2019 Expo, and I was just taking it in as a fan. And it was pretty remarkable to just see how this industry has grown.
Oh.
And I know how much bigger it can get. There's so many aspects of fantasy football. Back when you started playing in 1985, you were probably in just an all touchdown league or all yardage league.
Touchdown only, because I had to do all the stats, so I wasn't doing. I didn't even know what PPR meant at that point.
No, absolutely not. And we've just seen it evolve into PPR leagues, into Superflex leagues, into Dynasty
IDP,
leagues, Devy leagues, IDP, daily fantasy, and it's crazy. I started playing in about 2005.
Okay.
And I was playing before I even knew what fantasy football was. I was studying all the stats on the back of my football cards in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
All the Emmitt Smith cards, all the Barry Sanders.
Sure.
And I obviously was in love with football at a young age. And then when I found fantasy, it was just a hobby that turned into an obsession. And it's just – I love it. Obviously, I found Dynasty after this, and now Devy, and it mixed everything: the NFL draft and NFL stats, the players, the coaches. You bring it completely goes full circle. So, I want to say I'm happy to bring you in on this show today.
Thank you.
When did the Fantasy Expo start? Was it 2019 the first year?
It was 2019, and it was interesting because. A bunch of people, Casey Kasem, you guys know her out there, Nate Hamilton, and a number of others, Kevin Murray, all went to Dallas for this thing that was supposed to be the Sports Con or National Fantasy Football Convention. And I looked into it, but, a cheap booth was like $1,200, and for $500 more, You'd have a person come to the table and sign autographs like a player, like a good player, like it might have been Zeke or Pat Mahomes. So like the way I looked at it, it was gonna be like $3-4 grand for me to even go there and be there, and and I was just like, it's a little out of my price range. And so anyway, so a bunch of the other ones went. I think they went more as fans, not to get booze, obviously. And they just said it sucked. They said it was all about the autographs. It was all about the players. There was very little fantasy at all there. And they said, man, I wish, somebody needs to put something like this together that we can all be a part of. I live in Canton, Ohio. Got
what better place?
Hall of Fame. You want me to slap one together? I mean, we were talking in May, and we were going to put it together in August. And I said, if I did this and the boost cost like $200, $300 and, to cover my costs for the rental, the spots and, that stuff, who wants to come? And within a month, I sold out all 30 booths, and it was a nice event, but we didn't have the attendees. We didn't have I put $3 grand into Facebook ads and Twitter ads and trying to get people from the community and the Facebook. I was just, anything I could think of, advertising and radio, and we had like 75 people. I was like, okay. Yeah, but, I didn't lose any money. So, it was like, okay, I broke even, all good. And so, we'll do it better in 2020. Well, we all know what happened. So, going into 2021 and, after going through COVID and that, I started, you started seeing that kind of glimpse of, oh, we have vaccinations, and by August, this might all be cleared up and we could get together and meet again. And so I paid for somebody to kind of improve the website, make it easier to use, be able to do more stuff. I thought about making more of it out of a weekend out of it, not just one day, so that we get more out of town people in to come and visit the Hall of Fame and do the expo and have a party and, do draft night out. And, all these kind of things all kind of came together. And it was just the perfect storm. The need to get out of the house, the need to go somewhere, the need for fantasy football community. And we'd all be pretty cleared up from a vaccination and COVID standpoint. And that perfect storm just exploded. And within weeks, I had sold out the 70 rooms at the hotel that we had reserved. We were starting, it was just nonstop registrations, and we're 3 weeks away and we're getting close to 350 people.
That's amazing.
75 just 2 years ago. And, we might hit 400 in the next 3 weeks. Who knows? But the most amazing thing to me of all of this is that 70% of the people coming to the event don't live in the state of Ohio. That's what's amazing. That's what talks about the community coming together to support a cool event. And, I'm not here to pat myself on the back or anything like that. I'm just here to say this community brought this together. I just came up with the idea and said, hey, what do you think about having it here? Because I have the Pro Football Hall of Fame and I live here. And you live here. And everybody loved the idea. And, now they're building this Hall of Fame village, which Zach, around it, where they're going to have water parks and hotels and convention centers and restaurants and bars and Top Golf and all this kind of stuff. So all coming to this village. So in 5 years, there's no reason this can't be 2,000-3,000 people instead of 200-300.
Yeah, it's going to be like Disney World, but for football addicts.
For fantasy football.
It's been building for like 7-8 years now, so I'm kind of getting anxious. When are they finally going to get it done?
Yeah, they're moving a little bit better than they were before. That's for sure.
The new stadium is amazing, but the whole village isn't quite there.
No,
but
not yet.
Bob, I will be here to pat you on the back because
thank you.
If you turn an event in 3 months and you had 75 people and you have almost 400 and you've times it by like 5, I can't imagine in 5 years when this Hall of Fame village is finally built and it is like Disney World for the football fans, and people can come out for the weekend, for the week, and just take everything that Canton has to provide out there. And then event like the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, where pro football started. That's why the Hall of Fame's here, because football started in this town. What better place to have the Fantasy Football Expo?
Right.
And so you aren't just, the guy that put this all together. You are an author. How long have you been writing your consistency guide?
Well, the guide itself is only in its 2015. So, basically, I came up with this idea for this my consistency calculation. There's certainly been consistency in fantasy football written by other people. Tristan Cockroft was doing it in 1999. But my calculation, my system, my scenario, whatever you want to call it, I created in 2002, started writing, putting it together, Excel, got my brother-in-law who did Visual Basics to put together some database stuff for it, and we just progressed through the years and get it into like a full report that you can get off the website and put in your own scoring method, and it calculates the consistency of the player. So once I kind of had all of this data at my fingertips, I was writing every year a 1-page, maybe 2-page article for some of the fantasy football books that were going on the shelves in bookstores. And I always said to them, look, I've got this data. I'd love to. What if we put this consistency information in the profiles with the players that you have? So we just kind of add this to it. It'd be something unique and different. And they all love the idea, but they all said, we don't have the room. We're already at 100 some pages and we just don't have the space. Well, finally, somebody, I don't know who brought it to my attention, or if I figured it out on my own, I found out, hey, you can self-publish your own books on Amazon. I'm like, oh, okay. So
right.
I put the book together. I mean, anybody who buys the book, if you're looking for color pictures and cool graphics and all that, I'm going to be you're going to be disappointed. But if you want data that has been proven that consistency will help you pick better players, make better choices in your drafts, in your waiver wire pickups, and I've been using it for years and winning, against other top experts in the country, then this is the book. And I started publishing it on Amazon. And, a couple of years ago, it was almost at 3,000 copies. Last year dropped off because of COVID. But I'm on pace again, maybe for another 3,000 copies this year. And again, it just blows me away that the community has been so supportive, really loves the book, loves talking about it, puts me on podcasts. And so thank you to everybody out there who's done that. And I'm glad everybody enjoys it. I love getting the emails at the end of the year when they say, Bob, man, last year or 2 years ago, man, I was dead last. And man, I read your book the last 2 years. And this year I won my championship. And, that's the kind of stuff that makes it all worthwhile. I mean,
absolutely.
So that's what's cool, is that it does make a difference and people see it and have thanked me for it. And, so yeah, I enjoy doing it. It's a labor of love. I start in January and get done in April, but I got nothing better to do, right?
So it's called the Consistency Guide. Now I'm going to bend your ear a little bit. I don't need all the secrets, I guess. So what goes into your equation of creating this consistency rating, or just the guide in general? I guess compared player to player. I mean, does this go? How deep does it go into?
Well, the idea was that I wanted to be able to create what is called the clutch factor, or that weekly score that a player at that position, based on the number of teams in your league, have to earn to make it into the top 12 quarterbacks, the top 24 running backs, 36 receivers, and 12 tight ends. That number will adjust weekly. So it may start high, may start low, but it'll just over time adjust. So there can be weeks where there's 14 quarterbacks that earn over it. Sometimes there's 9, sometimes there's 16. So it kind of fluctuates a little bit, especially as the season begins. But the idea is that, over the year, it'll balance itself out. So like, for example, last year, a quarterback in a 4-point per passing touchdown, regular scoring kind of thing, had to get over like 20.5 fantasy points to earn a clutch game. So every clutch game you earn, more you earn, the more consistent you are. So if you got 12 out of 16, you're 75%, then you're a very good quarterback. That means you're a very consistent quarterback. And then for like running backs, wide receivers, it's about 11-ish, somewhere around 11 points each. And tight ends is about 8.5. So the more consistent they are, that means they're earning over this threshold. But it helps identify those that are doing that consistently. Like a TJ Hawkinson last year was 75% consistent, but he was still 100 points behind Kelsey. But he at least earned over that 8.5 points every week to kind of give you something that you could rely on him every week. He wasn't going to get you Kelsey points, but you probably drafted him around 8 or 9, so you're probably doing okay. So that's the kind of things and kind of players that the book and the guide is really supposed to try to help identify, is those that are more consistent than you think they would be. And then vice versa, the guys like Tyler Lockett, who were 8th in total points, but 50% consistent, which means half of the games he did not earn over 11 points. So that's going to kill you.
I was a big Tyler Lockett owner last year. So there was a couple games I really needed him, and he completely bailed on me. But the game against Arizona, where he went off for like 45 plus, was one of my biggest games in one of my biggest dynasty leagues. And if my buddy Sean's listening, he took an L that day after having a humongous lead because it was on a Sunday night, and Tyler Lockett just destroyed Arizona after up by like 40 points. You figure you're good. Tyler Lockett's not going to go ahead and destroy me like he did. Nice. We had some really good conversations in our chat over Tyler Lockett, but he was a guy that, I mean, just to bring him up, that you didn't have to put a ton of you didn't buy him as the 8th overall wide receiver, obviously.
Yeah,
So
right, sure.
wide receivers are like that. It's very hard to find consistency in wide receivers. That's why Devontae Adams last year was so remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, that's why the best of the best. Michael Thomas in 2019, they were so consistent because you make so much sense. They finish high in the rankings every single week at the end of the day. And then you have your Tyler Lockett's, but the draft capital has to come into it.
Right,
So
sure.
just in your preseason guide, can you throw out a couple of guys that maybe are high up in the consistency rankings and maybe a couple of guys that you would think would be higher that are not?
I mean, let's go to the wide receivers because those are the ones that have a little more volatility amongst themselves. So for example, last year, like you said, you mentioned some of the big dogs that did really well. Surprisingly, DeAndre Hopkins was 4th in total points, but was 15th in consistency. Now that was his lowest season in the last 4 years. And it's mostly because he was on fire. He was like, I think he had a perfect 10 for 10. And then remember, Kyler Murray hurt his shoulder and really just could not get the passes off crisply. And that really affected Hopkins over those last 4 or 5 games of the year. So I think that's what kind of hit him. But, you got guys like Terry McLaurin, who was 19th in total points, but 6th in consistency. Brandon Cooks was 13th in consistency last year. A lot of people kind of forget about him. He's getting 0 love because he's playing in Houston. There's no Deshaun Watson. Somebody's got to catch the ball. So, that's a good value right now. Justin Jefferson was 7th in total points. Very good, but only 23rd in consistency. So again, a lot of hype for him. I mean, I've seen him going in top 10 wide receiver scenarios, and I'm like, let's give him another year to get that excited. But but then there's guys like you said that I think have great potential to come, have a solid season. Guys like John Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, Russell Gage is kind of my personal favorite. Now you look at last year's numbers, and you're like, 50% consistency didn't do much, because he was the 3rd wide receiver. Problem is that he was 71% consistent when he was replacing Julio Jones in the lineup when Julio was out. Guess what? We have no Julio in Atlanta. Yet I can get Russell Gage as my wide receiver 5 in most drafts. So I'm all over him this year. So, as I said, there's guys out there that can be some really good value. John Brown, just 2 years ago, was 80% consistent before Stephon Diggs came to Buffalo. Well, now he's in Las Vegas as basically the wide receiver 1 with Henry Ruggs and Hunter Renfrow. So he's going to get a lot of looks, and I love him as, again, a wide receiver 5 or 6 as well. So a lot of good value out there that I think can get some consistency from and get some good value out of, and those wide receivers are definitely some that I like a lot.
Yeah, I had Joe Pisapia on the show last week, and
my buddy,
we did a little episode of you got to turn chicken shit into chicken salad, and one of the chicken shits were the Oakland. I didn't say that. Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver core, right. And I asked him to make some chicken salad of it. We ended up both liking the ADP of John Brown the best, basically for free. Basically, like you said, wide receiver 6, probably 17th round or something. I prefer Henry Ruggs a little bit earlier, but you're going to have to spend more draft capital on him. I'm, I guess, a fan of his college tape. I loved him coming out of Alabama. I was hoping they were going to get him more involved, but Henry he got hurt early in the season. You never quite seen the same burst that he had in the Kansas City game that he got hurt, where he finally kind of broke out. But these wide receivers, they are all over the place because that's kind of what it is. You're going to get a big game, but not many of them can be very consistent for 15 plus points every single game. All right. Let's switch off to the running backs. Anybody stick out that might be a little bit higher on your list than you would think consistently wise, or maybe vice versa?
The one that's, I guess, has surprised me the most, and there's not a huge difference. He's getting a little bit more love now than he was, but 2 months ago, there was 0 love for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And it's surprising because last year, if you went and drafted CEH, you needed to draft him in the 1st round coming out of college. He had a terrible offensive line. He got hurt late in the season, and he was still 77% consistent, which ranked him 10th. He did miss a couple games, But his ADP was like around running back 14, and it might be like 12 now. But you've got an improved offensive line. Obviously, you have lots of weapons around him, so nobody can focus on him. And yet you can draft him as your RB2. I mean, I'm all over that, every day and twice on Sunday, because he's what he's going to get. If he stays healthy and everybody stays healthy for the Chiefs, I mean, easy 10, 12 touchdowns, 1,000 yards, probably, 40, 50 catches out of the backfield. I mean, he'll be close to those RB1 numbers again, that he could have had last year if he would just stayed a little more healthy and stayed in the run. And, a lot of people were just kind of down him, but I love him a lot. Another one is J.K. Dobbins. Again, became the late starter in the second half of the year. Second half of the season, 88% consistency. He went 8 of 9. Now, of course, Ingram is gone. He is the man. His ADP is like RB16. Again, RB2, when you might get RB1 value out of him, are both two guys I really love. I'm one of the few, I think, that love Mike. I shouldn't say love. Like Mike Davis a lot. His ADP is like RB27. He was 67% consistent last year when he played in games that McCaffrey did not. That's not bad when you realize that was a terrible team. Now you have the Falcons, which has a much better offense around him, much better offensive line. So again, he stays healthy. He's a gutsy player. Goes out, gets the job done. He's not fancy. He's not going to catch a lot of passes, but if he can get you, 70 yards rushing and a touchdown, that's 13 points. If he does, any catches at all, could be even more. So, he's never going to get 30 points a week, but it'll get you 15 to 20, maybe 12, 15 to 20, something like that. And that's all a consistency game is all about. And if you can get that as your RB2, or basically you can draft him as your RB3, I think that's pretty good value as well.
Yeah, Mike Davis had some really sneaky games last year for the Carolina Panthers, and everybody kind of did. They just didn't score touchdowns. Teddy Bridgewater moved up and down the field. I loved having their kicker, but they just didn't score touchdowns with Teddy. We'll see what they do with Sam Darnold. Mike Davis goes down south to Atlanta, where he's kind of the only guy there. So in redraft, Mike Davis is a great RB3 candidate. I love it. We have to chime on the biggest story in fantasy football this week, and it's the injury to Cam Akers.
Yeah.
Huge situation. I'm a guy that goes all the way back pre-2020 draft. He was my RB2, ahead of Jonathan Taylor, ahead of J.K. Dobbins, ahead of Allaire and Antonio Gibbs. He was my RB2. I loved him out of Florida State. I loved the Rams landing spot even more with Sean McVay. We didn't get it at first, kind of like J.K. Dobbins, but at the end of the season and in the playoffs, Cam Akers was the bell cow that we almost saw. It was going to be Todd Gurley again. I had him ranked redraft as my 8th running back. I felt really confident about that. And then I had dynasty shares everywhere. I know we're talking redraft right now, but I had dynasty shares everywhere. My heart ripped out of my chest when I heard the news of Cam Akers.
Right.
Darrell Henderson is there, Xavier Jones, a couple guys are there, Jim Funk that was just drafted in the 7th round, a couple guys are just blah. We do have Adrian Peterson hanging around somewhere, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, could he come back? Maybe a trade. I would love a Melvin Gordon trade. What do you see happening in LA with this running back situation?
Well, I think Henderson's going to get every opportunity to prove something in preseason. If he can prove it and he can get out there and show that he can be the man, then I think they stay, where they're at. We'll see if one of the other guys, like you said, Xavier Jones or Funk, steps up to kind of be the backup. But if Henderson struggles or maybe he can, gets injured or something like that, I'm been the guy that, just like you just said, that was the first thing that came to my mind. What a great spot for Melvin Gordon to go, because Broncos are in rebuild mode. They don't need it. They don't want the salary. Javonte Williams is their future. Man, if they could get something for Gordon, I think they'd trade him in a heartbeat, and the Rams would be smart to do it because they went and got Stafford. They have a great defense. They can be competitive in that NFC West. And if Henderson doesn't help Stafford from getting killed, and if he's not running the ball well and they're just blitzing the crap out of Stafford, he can't move. So if the running game doesn't work, that's not going to happen. It's not going to work well for the Rams. So I love the idea of Melvin Gordon going there. I just don't think they're going to pull the trigger until they see what Henderson has, what Gordon is looking like in offseason, which, I don't think he's injured, but just, and if those conversations start up between the Broncos and the Rams, I would not be surprised to see Melvin Gordon, because I think that's a better option than an older Peterson, an older Bell. I mean, Le'Veon Bell couldn't even make it in freaking Kansas City last year, so I think he's toast. Adrian still is Adrian. He's an alien. He'll never age. He's like Tom Brady. So he might go there and be a cheaper version probably of, than Melvin Gordon. But I think Melvin Gordon makes so much sense if the Rams really want to compete.
So you're kind of out on Darrell Henderson, who's actually kind of banged up right now with an undisclosed injury. And
yeah, I gotta say he's kind of one of those guys. Always seems to have the tweaks here and the tweaks there, and that's not going to fly. I mean, that's what happened to Gurley 2 years ago.
Yeah, and Henderson I was big on him coming out of the draft, and then I kind of I didn't see it as rookie season, and they bring in Akers, and I had to fade him. He had some productive games at the start of last year, but on the tape, he didn't look as explosive as Cam Akers. He didn't get on the outside. He wasn't as good a pass catcher. I don't think he's as elusive. Akers was a better player. I think Henderson can have some back-end RB2 value if he stays healthy. I think that's the biggest issue. Rookie season was an issue. Last year was an issue. I think the Rams are all in on their team right now in 2021, bringing somebody else in to at least compete with it. I'm not buying into Funk or Jones coming in there. Adrian Peterson makes a lot of sense for free. Or Melvin Gordon possibly we would probably have to wait till the season starts, and Denver was struggling, and then they kind of, hey, he's going to be a free agent. Send us over a 5th-round pick, and then we'll give you Melvin Gordon, because that offense needs a bell cow running back. That's the McVay system. Getting back to when they had Todd Gurley, they were so explosive. They made Jared Goff look so great, and you took away that run game, and they still had the weapons on the outside, but the offense did not look the same until Akers was getting in his groove. It's just real sad. I had to. I'm not gonna lie, I almost cried. I have so much of him in Dynasty.
Every year it's with somebody there, right? McCaffrey, and it's been, year after year, there's always that big player, one or two big players who go down in preseason. Like, damn it.
and it happened to be the guy that if you ask me, hey, Zach, who's the one player you can't lose? I would have said Cam Akers.
Yeah, right.
Seriously.
Well, especially Dynasty. I mean, what a great pick in Dynasty, and have him for years, and then boom, now here goes
season two. It's kind of what I'm going to do here at Roster Rescue. I'm here to help the viewers take a bad situation and spin it and try to keep going forward. So you have to have some sort of a plan. If you don't have Darrell Henderson, I guess, on a team, you're going to have to reach out to that owner, or you're going to have to maybe move a wide receiver to get another running back, because the running back make the fantasy world go around. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not a 0 RB guy, not in fantasy.
No.
In real life, I guess running backs are a different story. I wouldn't draft one in the first round, but in fantasy football, the world revolves around the running back position. Yep. So you have to go get it. I'm not going to fade that. So Cam Akers broke my heart. I made a couple trades. I got some future picks, and a couple teams sometimes, like in Dynasty, you have to, when you get an injury like that to your RB1, sometimes there's not another plan except to maybe build for the future. I actually sold him for a 1st and a 2nd-round pick and a super flex, and I was okay with it, because that's a nasty injury. I don't know if we're ever going – I don't know if we're ever going to see the ceiling of Cam Akers when he came out of Florida State.
I've tore both of mine, so –
your Achilles?
And one of them just happened 6 months ago. And I can't imagine. They're brutal.
I can't imagine, and I'm a huge fan, and we still might see a productive Cam Akers, but I promise you're never going to see the ceiling that we thought we were going to have with Cam Akers this season. My advice is to try to get Dart Henderson, or if you have him already, good job for having your handcuff, but don't expect him to be an RB1. Don't expect him to wear the Cam Akers shoes. At best, you're looking at a low-end RB2. But if Melvin Gordon lands in LA with Stafford in that offense, I do see RB1 numbers. So keep an eye on that. But I just that's speculation. We're obviously talking in Canton, Ohio right now.
Right.
They're in LA, and Mike McVay might like the guys they have there, or maybe somebody else.
Right.
So that was a huge situation. So going forward, this year was my first Scott Fishbowl.
Nice. Cool.
So it was a tight end premium league. How are you attacking the tight end position with your consistency rating? Because we talked about a couple guys. You already brought up Hawkinson and Kelsey. Kelsey, I mean, I bet he blows your consistency guide out of this world because he was 15 every single week. Waller was very good. George Kittle, a little bit more injury prone. I have Hawkinson up there in that mix because the Detroit Lions are one of those chicken shit offensive positions again, because their wide receivers are complete shit, and we couldn't make salad out of it. We couldn't make chicken salad out of that. Me and Joe really tried. The best we got was Quintus Cephas. So I don't know if anybody wants that on their roster in their starting lineup, even though somebody's going to be productive there in Detroit. How are you attacking this Detroit Lions offense? How are you attacking the tight end position, and is Hawkinson one of those guys?
I mean, Hawkinson's definitely one of those guys. So, I definitely look at the tight end position of, one, where am I drafting? What pick in the first round? If I'm drafting late and he falls to me, he will be on my team. More often than not, now he's going pick 6 and 7. And I'm not too sure I'm ready to go that high. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, his X consistency, which is basically his consistency, his fantasy points per game, puts him third in the wide receivers. Not tight ends, wide receivers. So he's worth it. If you're comfortable and you feel good in your drafting capabilities, I think you got to do it. Now, I do feel comfortable in my drafting capabilities because I'm going to find those consistent players and make up what I didn't get in the first round. But like you said, when I'm sitting there between Jonathan Taylor or Ezekiel Elliott and Kelsey, a little rough. So
it is.
Usually, go ahead.
No, it really is. And I'm a guy that I'm notorious for waiting on tight ends. I've been doing it since 15 years ago. I always tried to find say Mark Andrews 2 seasons ago, or the Darren Waller 2 seasons ago, the guy that emerges out of nowhere. I had a ton of Logan Thomas last year, a guy that was very startable at the end of the season. I got him for absolutely free. First round, unless even in a super flex, I'm usually trying to get my RB1 because you have to, because they're going to go so fast off the board. But if you took Kelsey and the thing of it is, if you take Kelsey, I feel like you have to be perfect the next few rounds. You cannot have a miss in the second or the third round on a running back because you're just not going to get them. They're going to go off the board.
Right.
Where you can kind of lean on a Dallas Goedert or a Mark Andrews later in the draft, or find your Logan Thomas, or try to play the streaming game with maybe an Ebron or whoever. But I just feel that you have to be too perfect if you go Travis Kelsey in the first round. But in tight end premium,
tight end premium.
In the Scott Fishbowl, because it was a 0.5 PPR, Kelsey went like 4th overall. Waller went 8th. And I thought that was a little crazy. I ended up getting Lamar Jackson in the first round. I got my quarterback 1. Then I got Derrick Henry the next round on the turn, and I felt pretty comfortable about that in a 0.5 PPR league. But I mean, the tight ends, it's kind of feast or famine. I either go really hard early and you have to put a lot of draft capital in it, or I completely fade it and try to build my wide receiver core later in those rounds and then try to find my guy. I ended up with Hawkinson at 5.2, which I thought was really good value in the Fishbowl.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, so if you go there, then, the next phase is the Waller and Kittle, which is usually round 2, maybe early round 3. If you're lucky and you get to pick first and you get the 2-3 flip, if Waller falls to you there and you've got McCaffrey, that's definitely scenario. Hawkinson's like round 5, 6, but more often than not, what I've done is waited to round 9 or 10 and drafted either Logan Thomas, Robert Tonyan, Mike Gesicki, or Zach Ertz. That's my 4 guys. I'm going to get 2 of those guys around 9 or 10. All of them had, I mean, we all know that Tonyan and Thomas, you already mentioned, were 3rd and 4th in total points last year. Both were in the top 7 in consistency. Gesicki was actually 75% consistent when Tua was on the field. So the last 6 games, he went 4 for 6. So he actually was very consistent with Tua on the field. So I think he's a really good pick, again, at 9-10 swing. And then the guy that everybody forgets about is Zach Ertz. It's like, okay, he didn't die. Yes, he got hurt. Yes, he's maybe not the Zach Ertz of 3 years ago. But again, it was only 3 years ago that he was like 80% consistent. If he can get traded to Indy, oh my gosh, him and Carson Wentz and Reich all together, he could easily be right up there in the top 5 or 7 at least in total points and consistency. So I'm grabbing one of those 4 guys in rounds 9 and 10. If one works out, great. If they both work out, that's even better. I got an extra flex and a bye week and maybe trade bait. But that's kind of my options. I'm either Kelsey late first. Maybe if I've got a shot at Waller, I'm staying away from Kittle just because of injuries. Hawkinson, probably not either, but then I just wait until 9-10 and get one of those 4 guys.
I like that. I like to go back to back sometimes like that. If you wait, the longer you wait, the probably the sooner that I take my tight end too. Mm-hmm. I like Jonnu this year in New England. Cam Newton looks for the tight end, and I don't like the wide receivers they brought in.
I mean, if they wouldn't have got Henry, I would have been all in on Jonnu as well. It's just that damn
might be top
Hunter
5,
Henry
top
and
6.
Jonnu. So
it's kind of pick your poison. I think Jonnu, I like them both. I think they're both going to be decent back end tight end ones, around 10 to 15. I see them both going. I think Jonnu will probably have more yards. I think Hunter Henry will probably have more receptions. They'll both have around the same touchdowns. That's how I see it. They're going to run a ton of 2 tight ends formations. I think it's obvious. They went out there and spent decent money on both of them. They're going to be playing both of them. Right. Now, if one would get hurt, then the other one would go up a lot. I actually had a dynasty team that had both of them. Like, those were my 2 tight ends last year, and I was okay with it. I was kind of streaming it back and forth. And, of course, they both went to the New England Patriots. So I've been trying to trade one of them the whole offseason. It hasn't worked out so far for me. But that's the tight end position. If you don't get one early, I try to get 2 back end and then stream them and see if you can get a darling late, because I'm trying to get my running back core first before I get a tight end. I'm sorry, Travis Kelce, and one of these days the wheels are going to fall off him. It's not going to be this year. I'm not going to say it's going to be this year, but him and Pat Mahomes have a connection that is really second to none. So we've dipped on every position except the quarterback. How does your guide, I guess, hit the quarterback? I have a feeling that the rushing quarterbacks are really consistent for your consistency guide. The Lamar Jacksons, the Kyler Murrays, the Deshaun Watson before all this drama. The running quarterbacks, I feel, have a very safe floor week to week.
I think you'd be surprised. Not as much.
Okay.
Not saying they don't. Josh Allen was 75%. I mean, Mahomes was 93. I mean, he is the Kelce of the group. Now, he doesn't score the points. He didn't have the points differential like he had 2 years ago when he was like 100 points ahead of everybody else. But he did not play in the last game, and that's why he ended up 5th. If he scores 30 points in the last game, he would have been in 1st. That's how close it was between 1 and 5. But his 93% consistency, which means his X consistency, is 26 compared to Josh Allen's, which is 21. And he was the top scorer, is why you have to take Mahomes. Now, again, it's all based on, do you want to pay the price? I've seen him go in the 3rd round. I've seen him go in the 4th. If I can give him the 5th round, I'm all over him. Maybe even the 4th round, late 4th, if possible. I will pay up for him. But if I don't, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, both 75%. But like Lamar Jackson was 67%, which isn't terrible. That ranked him ninth. But Brady was in the top 10 at 63%. Kirk Cousins had a higher consistency rating than Lamar Jackson. So it's possible. It's possible.
Wow, that is surprising. You're right. I am surprised.
It's mostly because of those last 8 games that he had when the defense just gave up and they were just throwing all the time.
And it kind of goes along with the Justin Jefferson narrative that he was a little bit more inconsistent and he really just blew up at the end of the year. He had a couple of humongous games, which that's okay. You're gonna take that. And the same with Kyler Murray. When I think about it, he had a couple duds at the end of the season when he was hurt.
Right.
So you have to account for that. Absolutely.
Right.
And hopefully they do a little bit better job to keep that man healthy because they're going to need it in that tough NFC West division, which I think every single NFC West game should be a primetime game. Seriously. With any of those games, the Rams versus the Cardinals, Seahawks, 49ers, all of them. Every single NFC West game is must-see TV. I can't wait for football. If you can't tell, we got Hall of Fame week in 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks away from the first preseason game. Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys. It's going to be nuts right down the street.
Right.
I cannot wait for it. So, Fantasy Football Expo, Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Bob Lung, I love it, man. You have anything else before we end the show today?
No, just thank you for having me. Everybody, if you haven't got if you don't know about the Fantasy Football Expo, especially if you're living in Northeast Ohio or anywhere near Canton, Ohio, come down for it. It's 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Sunday, August 15th at the Doubletree Hilton downtown Canton. It's only $10 to get in. You can't beat that price. Just come down and enjoy. Now, if you live out of town and you're seeing this from somewhere else in the country, but it sounds like a lot of fun, come in town, go to thefantasyfootballexpo.com. We have ticket packages where you can get a ticket to tour the Hall of Fame. We're having a big party Saturday night. We've got draft night out. Guys are doing live drafts during the day on Saturday. The King's Classic, which is the biggest, basically the biggest and best experts draft. Top experts, all the top experts in the country are drafting live at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So Brad Evans, Mike Clay, Dave Richards, Andy Behrens, Michael Fabiano, you name them, all of them are coming to town. That'll be happening live at the Hall of Fame on that Saturday, August 14th. And if you're touring the Hall of Fame, you can pop into the Gold Jacket Lounge and watch us draft. I'll be there as well because I put it together. That's the only reason I'm in. But definitely come and check it all out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Zack will be there. I'll be there. It's going to be a blast, people. You do not want to miss this. Definitely.
I know. It's going to be a little overwhelming. As many people as I know from the industry that's coming that I've been networking with, it's like it's going to be really hard to see everybody, to talk to everybody.
Yeah,
it's going to be so big this year.
That's why come in for the weekend.
Yeah, that's why you got to be there the whole weekend. It's going to take 3 days to try to meet all the fantasy heads that are coming into Canton, and it's amazing. And I can't wait to see what's on the horizon. What's next? Like next year, the 2022 and the 2023.
I'm already talking to the vice president of the village about trying to get a bigger venue. Because what if next year we have 600 or 700 people?
I mean, I think it's gonna be easy. It easily met like those numbers right there. Like it's gonna keep. People are gonna keep coming back. The people in the industry are gonna keep coming back. The fans are gonna start coming out, and the people fantasy's getting bigger every year. I mean, there's a reason there's a DraftKings commercial on every 5 seconds.
Well, if Ohio gets gambling legalized, like they're supposed to be doing, the sports betting, they're supposed to be putting a sports book at the village. So now we'll get DraftKings to come, we'll get FanDuel, we'll get Monkey Knife Fight, we'll get all these people to come in town because that's just another whole part of the business that we're not even addressing at this point because we're not legal yet.
And I cannot wait. Disney World's gonna meet Vegas, gonna meet the NFL, and we're right here for it in the Hall of Fame city, Canton, Ohio. So Bob, thank you so much for jumping on Roster Rescue today.
My pleasure.
Everybody Go follow him on Twitter. Go get his book. Go come see us in Ohio on Amazon. And thanks so much, Bob. It's been amazing. I can't wait to see you in a couple weeks, man. Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy. Good seeing you. Thanks again.